further. Titled woman. I'm not lying. My brother. Security is coming, so please wait here. Entitled lady. It's unfair. All those people with loads of groceries, and me nothing. You arrest me? Coworker. Yeah, but they paid for it. Now the woman made fists and pushed her card away and said, "This is unfair," and was ready to give my coworker and my brother a punch, and was willing to fight and was about to. But before that happened, the security came and took her down, and she was now on the ground, not unconscious or anything. She then got taken away by the cops, and my brother and his coworker left to go work again, and that was about it. This isn't a dog daycare. A while back, I was working in an office that allowed dogs. It was an open floor plan, and since customers never came into the office, we kept the dog food and water bowls right by the front door just because it was the most convenient space, and no one else would see them but us who worked there. Of the 6 of us who worked in the main office area, I was the only one who didn't have a dog. No pets policy at the apartment, and always felt horribly left out. To make matters worse, across the way was a doggy daycare. One day, a very frantic woman came in, and she had an absolutely massive dog with her. Usually, the only people who came into the office were associates who had appointments with someone working there, but it was rare they brought their dogs. She ran up to me and said, "Do you work here?" And I said, "You." And she said, "I wasn't sure if you took walk-ins, but I read online I could just drop them off. I tried to call, but no answer." I didn't know what she was talking about at that point, and I said, "Come again? Who did you call exactly?" Thinking if I could just saddle her off to whoever she came to see, I wouldn't have to decipher her problem. She said, "Well, it doesn't matter now. Look, something urgent's come up, and I really need to leave him here. Here's his food he likes, and I'll be back in a few hours, and..." At this point, I wasn't thinking of the doggy daycare. I thought maybe she was a friend of someone here. I said, "Well, all right. Can I get your name, please?" And she said her name, and then asked if I needed her to sign anything. And I was so confused at this point, I just said, "Why would I need you to sign something?" And she left almost immediately. So I took Otis, the dog, to the back and showed him to my coworkers, and no one knew the woman or dog. I was worried she wouldn't come back, but at the same time, my wish for an office dog had been granted, and Otis was supremely chill. All he did all day was lie around and drool onto his own ears. I just freshened him up every now and then, took him out every couple hours, and he was happy as a clam on a big, cushy dog bed we thankfully had an extra of. He just loved attention from anywhere he could get it. At the end of the day, the woman, thank God, came back. She said, "Thanks, you're a lifesaver. How was he?" And I said, "He was a champ," and was about to say, "But why is he here?" when she said, "That's a relief. Most kennels say he gets anxious around other dogs. I heard you operated at a much higher capacity. I was thrilled to see you had so few clients in the room at one time. So, how much do I owe you?" And that's when I realized she thought we were a dog daycare. Now, I probably should have corrected her, but I loved my day with the office dog, and I did want to get paid for supervising this strange dog all day. I just threw out the number that sounded fair and appropriate. "That'll be $20, I said. She replied, "Really?" in this very high tone, and I couldn't tell if I had overshot or undershot, but she paid me and left. My coworkers were laughing hysterically when they realized what had happened, and we thought it would just be a good story for the future. But the next week, she came back. She said we were so much more affordable and less overcrowded than her other friends. She was happy to use us. I was glad for the company, so I just took him. I didn't think there was any way she couldn't have at least some idea we weren't a dog daycare. The whole ordeal was so strange, I just figured, don't question a good thing. I was much younger and dumber then. Not long after, Otis started getting dropped off 2, sometimes even 3 or 4 days a week. I was in heaven. He was such a love, and he made fast friends with the delivery guys and visitors. We took our office Christmas card photo, and Otis was over that day, so we included him in a Santa hat. It was pretty great. But it turns out Otis' owner was friends with one of our clients, who I guess happened to have the card out on her table, or was kind enough to display it alongside her other holiday cards. Because one day, Otis' owner came in holding the card, and walked up to me and said, "I can't even believe I'm asking this, but is that my dog in this photo? This isn't a dog daycare at all. This is just an office, isn't it?" She said it with a note of surprise, as though she was looking around and putting it all together for the first time. No coincidence that this was the first time she wasn't in some crazy rush either. She was like, "And who are all these other dogs?" And I explained. I was terrified she was going to demand her money back, or worse, take some sort of legal action against us for misrepresenting ourselves as a dog care business, or complain to corporate. Instead, she basically said, "Why didn't you ever say anything?" And I explained we just really liked having Otis around. She stopped for a minute and seemed to be thinking and said, "Is that right?" And I said yes, and told her the story of how I was the only one in the office without a dog, so loved the company. She seemed a little flummoxed or hesitant, understandably, because the whole ordeal was so weird. She turned to my coworker and asked if I was telling the whole truth. I don't know why she thought my coworker, also a stranger to her, was any more trustworthy than me. But hey, strange times. Coworker backed me up. So she said, "I wish you'd said something sooner. Could have saved me a lot of embarrassment with my friend back there. All right, I have to get going. See you at 4. And she left Otis. I couldn't believe it. I said, "So he can stay?"
Hey, so
And
who's
she
ready to go see
replied,
some tryouts?
"Where else could I find someone to watch him one-on-one all day for $20? And off she went. Otis stayed my office dog until his family moved away. Luckily, right around the same time, I took a new job.
Okay, who's
Speaking
up
of
for some good
dogs,
news?
what's your favorite dog breed of all time?
According
Please
to
let
their
me know.
records, the club owners
Stop
had
sending your kid
CCTV
over.
installed a
I
while
am
back.
not a
We can just check
babysitter.
the footage at the
At
time when we
first,
know the
I
phone was on
wasn't sure
set
if this was
and
an
see who was
entitled
there.
parent story,
Sound like a
because I
plan
think
to
this
me.
woman is just plain
But
crazy.
this system
But
is an
after
antique.
reading a
It's
few of
not even
these,
online,
I had
so
figured
we'll need
out
the
that
actual
crazy and
security tape
entitled
from
are
their
one and the
office.
same.
Shit,
Years ago,
I
this new
thought this was
neighbor of
gonna be
mine,
difficult.
she had recently moved to a house on the next street over, kept trying for the better part of a summer to use me as a free babysitter. It started when her kid, who was a really well-behaved kid, about 7, showed up at my door at 7:15 in the morning.
Now,
We were all just waking up, getting around, so I told him that my boys weren't ready to play.
here's a little tip if you made it this far. Little tip for this place. Okay. Okay, you don't have to get the cleaning van or anything. That's a waste of time. Doesn't matter. It's a waste of time. Okay, put your car right about here or this bike. Flying Mach 2. Okay, so best one going there with this one. I did forget to get my grenades from my grenade launcher. Yeah. Now you can sneak up and kill these guys, or you can just do it like I do. I can just kill them. Come on, stand up, you dork. Okay, so what's this door? This door. Okay. And that's how you get that. Should call it a hard drive, really, shouldn't they? Because why would it be a tape? That's what I want to know. Should be a hard drive, though. Oh, and back to
Yet, and to come back in a few hours. That is when the kid told me his mom had gone to work. This seemed a bit odd to me, so I brought him in and tried to call his mom. This was the time of only landlines. Sure enough, she was gone. So I brought him
I
in and
remember
fed him
those
breakfast.
times.
He
Hard
stayed with
times.
us the rest of the day, and he got along well with
No
my two
internet.
boys, who were 5 and 10. I had only talked to his mom about 2
Imagine.
times, so
No
I had no
internet.
idea why she would think this was a good idea.
No
When his mom
online
came home, I
games.
walked him over so I could talk to her. I told her
No
not to do
cell
that again.
phones.
I told her that I would be willing to watch him on occasion if asked first, but not every
Rotary
day. Her
phones.
response was, "Well, what else do you have to do all day?" This kind of took me by surprise. I tried to tell her that I work at home on commissions. She rolled her eyes and told me that being an artist isn't a real job. And besides,
It's not
I
a
was
real
married, so I
job
didn't need to work.
if you're an
I should have
artist.
pointed out to her that she was married and working, but I felt myself getting angry, and I didn't want to argue with her. "Just don't do that again," I said to her. "You have teenage kids home for the summer. Have them babysit." She frowned at me and said, "They work." I said, "So do I." Then I went home. The next morning at 7:15, the kid sheepishly shows up again. Once again, I bring him in and feed him breakfast and later lunch. Once again, I took him to his home, and once again told his mother to please not do that again. She actually tried to tell me that it was my neighborly duty to watch him, and I told her that if she sent him tomorrow, I wouldn't be there because of a doctor's appointment. She said that as a babysitter, I should have given her several days' notice about this. I angrily told her I was not a babysitter, and then went home. The next morning, I made my sister their character. We have a widespread of technical prowess on staff, so I focus on the person. After years in IT, I think I can do this pretty well. Last week, the owner sent a resume and called me to do a phone screen of a prospective employee. I happily agreed, not having read the resume. I finished my evening and went to bed. The next day, I read the resume. This guy claimed to have worked at my former employer, a university, 9 years ago when I worked there, doing my job as a student worker working to gain 2 master's degrees in 2 years. Before you start laughing, keep in mind, this will mess with you. You don't expect this level of dishonesty on a resume. I started asking myself when I actually worked at the former employer what I may have missed. What could have happened? I actually reached out to my former coworkers about this person. I managed a lot of the student workers, but not all of them, so I thought maybe I was forgetting someone. Nobody knew him. It was suggested that perhaps the resume had formatting errors, or he was talking about the wrong university. There is another school in town with a very similar name, so this is not unheard of. I decided to give the candidate the benefit of the doubt, but I wanted to be sure about my former workplace. I called the registrar's office to verify the degrees. After much checking, we could find no record that he even attended the school. I should have called off the interview, but at this point, I was still trying to give the benefit of the doubt. I called him on time and started the interview as normal. I explained the position, told him this would be a technical interview, and answered his first questions. We started going through his resume, and I asked a technical question relating to his claimed experience. That is when I first heard the mechanical keyboard. I cannot be certain, no video, but I am fairly confident that he was Googling the answers to questions I was asking. I adjusted and started asking follow-up questions that would be too hard to quickly search for. He was unable to answer those. After a few minutes, we got to my former employer. I asked who his supervisor was. I have never heard of the person he claimed. I let him know I worked there at the same time he was claiming, in the IT department, like he was claiming. He responded with, "Oh, crap." I explained briefly that I was the person that would have been his boss, and that he was claiming to have done my job. He tried to tell me that he worked in a different building. This is when I got mad. I told him that there was only one IT department for this rather small school. I had to stop myself from calling out all the crap. Just decided that this is cheaper than hiring more staff, and that most of the customers are rabid enough to still buy Apple Tech, despite the blow this causes to decent customer service. After finally jumping through a number of hoops to get a Genius Bar appointment, I'm prompted to enter my Apple ID and password. I'm told that, since it's been 3 months, I need to change it, for what is now probably the 10th time since having that Apple ID. I can continue to use it on the App Store and iCloud and stuff, but if I want a service appointment, I must change it. Having gone through this for the last several times to get an appointment, I finally hit my wit's end. Decided it's an unnecessary step to just get my product serviced, and escalate the matter through the Better Business Bureau. Apple's initial response to the Better Business Bureau is a form letter saying that I need to just change the password because it's in my best interest for security reasons, and that they won't make any exceptions. I respond again, indicating that this is bad customer service and incongruent with the Apple Credit Home. customer service principles that all employees are trained in. Their next response was that Apple considers this matter closed. I hate that response. It's corporate speak for, "You're not worth our time anymore, go away." The Better Business Bureau closed the case shortly thereafter. I do some research and determined that, through my Apple Care Plus policy that I was paying for on both devices, there was actually no catch-all clause for why Apple could refuse to service the device. There were several exclusions, but arbitrary account security requirements were not part of them. I filed suit in small claims court for replacement value of the laptop and phone. Here's when things got interesting. I show up to the court date and the case is called. I come up to my podium, and at the defendant's podium appears the manager from the store I used to work at. It was in the same county as the court, but significantly farther away than an Apple store that was actually a mile from the courthouse. I never confirmed this, but I think Apple didn't pay attention to the details of the complaint on the form, just did a name lookup, and assumed that because I had previously worked at the store, that this was some employment dispute. The judge asks me to explain why I am suing, and in about a minute, I'm able to concisely explain that Apple was putting up an unnecessary and extra contractual blockade to me getting a service appointment for my broken devices, so I was suing to replace the devices. The judge then turns to the store manager, who has arrived at court in a t-shirt and jeans. I'm in a full suit out of respect for the court, but before asking for Apple's side of the story, asks if the manager is a lawyer. The manager says he is not. The judge says that since my state law requires that only a chief executive or a registered agent can represent a company in court, or they have to hire a lawyer to remove it to a higher district court, the manager responds that he understands, but that he's happy to set up a Genius Bar appointment right here, right now, at my convenience, to get the product repaired. The judge deems this reasonable. We agree on a time for me to come into my own store for service, and the case is continued for 2 weeks out, on the chance that things don't work out. I attend my appointment, and the technician is able to resolve all of my issues, and in addition, a senior Apple technician contacts me by email to indicate that he's overridden the password expiration requirement on my Apple ID, and I will never have to change it again. Cool deal, but I'm still out $60 for filing this court case to actually get things moving along. I appear for the continued court date, and the same manager appears again too. The docket is especially busy on this date, and we have a different judge who is slashing through cases. No nonsense. We're called, and I indicate that while we were able to resolve the problems with my equipment since the original trial, and am no longer seeking replacement value for my products, I should not have had to sue Apple to get this type of treatment that aligned with their contractual obligations to me as an Apple Care Plus customer, and believe that I should be awarded the $60 in court fees. The judge turns to the store manager and asks if he is a lawyer. Manager says no. Judge 2 gives him the same spiel. Manager retorts that he still believes that the court fees shouldn't be Apple's responsibility because blah blah blah.